Mr Frusciante pedal nuts worldwide rejoice. An affordable, mass-produced, easy-to-access Boss CE-1 replica has arrived. Alright, we are pretty late to the game with this one, but the Warm Audio WA-C1 Warm Chorus Vibrato brings a pretty faithful replication of the OG, the Boss CE-1 Chorus Ensemble, modernised with a few tweaks for today's pedal market. Welcome to Pedalboards of Doom. My name's Jason and this is our before you buy for the Warm Audio WA-C1 Warm Chorus Vibrato. Before we get started, this is not a sponsored video. I bought this pedal with my own money, so all the opinions in it are my own, and Warm Audio have had no involvement in the making of this video. With that out of the way, let's talk about why this pedal is significant. The Boss CE-1 is an absolute classic pedal, with the circuit itself coming from the legendary Roland Jazz Chorus Amplifier series, and it was Boss's first foray into guitar pedals. Originally targeted at keyboard players, it was quickly adopted by guitarists, becoming a mainstay on many pro guitarist rig, such as John Frusciante, Andy Summers and Brian May, to name just a few. In fact, it's become so legendary that the inevitable has happened, and now you'll be lucky to get one for under 600 quid. The original also has several drawbacks and limitations. For a start, it's absolutely huge. Not a problem if you're John Frusciante, but not exactly practical for us mere mortals. The power is also delivered by a hardwired mains cable, and the chorus effect has one control for intensity, which controls the rate and the depth simultaneously. Now, Warm Audio are by no means the first to attempt to replicate the CE-1, but I think this one is a little bit different from the other options on the market. For a start, it's not exactly what you would call boutique. It's got a pretty big company behind it, and these are being mass produced. This means that it's available at a much more affordable price, and you don't have to go very far to get one either. They're available at most of the main music retailers. Don't let that fool you though, this thing is built like a tank, and the enclosure is reassuringly heavy, and it does a really good job of paying homage to the original CE-1 while also drastically reducing the footprint. One of the key factors to getting a CE-1 replica right is that preamp, and that's here. It's 100% analog and it's matched to the original. The preamp has a high and low switch just like the original. The high setting will get you quite a lot of gain. The low setting will give you a bit more of a kind of crunch sound, but it still gets pretty dirty if you crank that knob all the way up. Just like the original pedal, that preamp is always on, regardless of whether you got the effect turned on or off. Now that might make you either very happy or very unhappy, depending on which camp you sit in, but it is ultimately the way the original operated. In a welcome tweak to the original CE-1, the WA-C1 splits out the chorus controls into individual rate and depth knobs, allowing you to get a much more varied range of chorus tones, while still also replicating the original tones of the CE-1. A dedicated foot switch allowing you to switch between chorus and vibrato is included, just like the original, but an addition that wasn't on the original is the high Z switch on the back, allowing you to adjust the impedance. When that high Z switch is switched on, it increases the impedance, making the pedal work better with passive guitar pickups. One key difference to the original that we really should highlight though is the PBOD chip that's been used. Now this is getting into the nitty gritty geeky detail, but we know that's the kind of attention to detail that our audience expects of us. Now the original CE-1 used a Panasonic MN3002 PBOD chip, a now pretty hard to get hold of and quite expensive chip that doesn't make a lot of sense for mass manufacturing of chorus pedals. A lot of modern CE-1 replicas, including the Warm Chorus Vibrato, use a MN3007 PBOD chip clocked to the same rate and depth as the original chip. Now some people swear blind that they can hear the difference between those two chips, but me personally, I've got just the right amount of hearing damage and absolutely no access to an original CE-1 to be able to do any kind of a comparison. So for me, it sounds close enough. But if you want that 100% replication of the original, you might want to bear that in mind. Alright guys, so the setup for the demo today then is my trusty American Vintage 65 Strat. It's going into my pedal board. The only thing I've got on is the Wampler catacombs for a tiny bit of reverb right now. The warm audio is in the signal path, which means that the preamp will be active, of course. And I've got no compression or anything else like that turned on at the moment, but I might add in the Wampler Ego 76 for a bit of compression later. And this is what it sounds like with the settings that you can see on screen here. So this is what it sounds like. And a lot of that grit is coming from that preamp. I've actually got it on the low setting at the moment over here, but it is at kind of 9 o'clock, right? So it's 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock. So it's quite gritty. If I take it back a little bit, you'll hear the level will drop down, but you'll hear it cleans up a bit more. But yeah, I like it just kind of getting that break up kind of tone going on. It's the kind of thing where if you play lightly, it can stay pretty clean still. But if you dig in, it really starts to break up. And you know, I mentioned before about Mr Frusciante using this pedal for kind of like really colouring his tone. And this is kind of his setup, albeit a much more stripped down version of it, right? I've only got one amp and it's a 20 watt version of that amp. He does use some other Marshall amps alongside the Silver Jubilee, but you could probably hear that straight away, right? So yeah, I really like it with the preamp kind of just doing that breakup thing. I think it sounds great. So we'll start with chorus and we'll set it in both knobs at around 12 o'clock. So fairly subtle. Let's see how subtle it goes. We'll turn both the rate and the depth down. And it almost sounds a bit phasery there, doesn't it? A little bit like a flanger phaser kind of sound. It's really subtle and it acts just kind of more like a widening effect. And I really like the way chorus can do that. I really like the effect it has on your tone in that sense. And you can really hear that grit coming through from that preamp as well. Now if we go for a kind of a more extreme setting, again it's still quite a slow setting. It's got a lot more depth in it because obviously we've cranked that depth way up, but it still sounds quite subtle and it's still sort of verging on that kind of flanger phasery type sound. So let's start to bring the rate up a bit. Now we're starting to get into the really warbly sounds, right? take it up a little bit more. And let's see what happens when we completely max it out. So starting to get a bit extreme, but still probably quite usable, right? Depending on the context and how you're playing, of course. Okay, so let's check out the vibrato. So while ever the red light is flashing, that means the chorus is active. And if we click the foot switch, it's going to switch over to vibrato. So it's set quite fast at the moment. Let's try it with both knobs at about 12 o'clock. So the WA-C1 differs from some of the other vibrato pedals I've had before, like the VB2W, in the way it kind of delivers that vibrato sound. At least that's how I understand it anyway. Some vibrato pedals will take out all of the dry signal and just leave the pitch modulated signal, and that's how they get the vibrato effect. I believe that what they're doing in this pedal and what the original did was just make both of the stereo signals pitch modulated rather than taking the dry out, which is why it still sounds quite chorusy, but it sounds more like an extreme chorus, if you get my meaning. I guess what I mean is it sort of still has that kind of wet sound to it. It still sounds like a chorus to me, but just more of an extreme kind of rate and depth. And I guess it's more akin to like a rotary sound as well, almost. I don't know, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. So let's see how subtle it'll go. So I quite like it set like that. It's still getting that kind of warbly sound, but it's not, you know, too kind of in your face. Let's go a bit more extreme on the depth. And let's see what it sounds like completely maxed out. So yeah, kind of crazy. And in a vibrato mode set like this, if we add a bit more dirt, we've got the brown amplification protein and I've got both sides turned on, we get that kind of suck my kiss tone. So let me show you that. Now obviously I've tweaked that a little bit to avoid the copyright gods, but you get the picture, right? So the final thing I want to do is kind of show you the range of gain you can get out of that preamp. So if I turn it all the way down, it is going to pretty much cut out my signal. So let's go to a quarter of the way. And this is where we started. Now I'm just going to have to watch my levels over here so I'm not clipping. So you can see even on the low setting there's quite a lot of gain in that preamp. And that's probably, you know, you're probably more suited, if you want to use it for gain, you're probably more suited to using humbuckers on the low setting. And then if you want to use it for a lot of gain on a single coil guitar, you want to switch it to the high setting. So let's show you that. So you can see we're already approaching the level we were at on the low setting when I started the demo. So when we were at kind of like 3 o'clock, right? So let's go to 12 o'clock. Very dirty at 12 o'clock. Right. Oh, let's see what my levels are like for this. We're not quite clipping yet. Okay, still not clipping, so that's good. So here's it maxed out, and you can see there's an awful lot of gain in this, right? Now, if you're going to use it, you might want to adjust the EQ on the amp a little bit. I've got the bass really cranked on the Silver Jubilee, so it probably is sounding a little bit kind of woofier than is perhaps what you would, you know, want out of this. But, you know, you get the idea. So yeah, loads of gain on tap basically. So that's kind of it for the audio demo, and I'll hand back over to me and to talk more about the pedal. Cheers. So to wrap up then, we like to end these before you buy videos with a quick recap on the kind of pros and cons of the pedal. So pros then, so firstly, it captures all those kind of original sounds that you would expect to get out of a CE1, but it also expands on that by giving you more control. It's also really affordable and readily available. I was able to just go ahead and buy this without any kind of a wait list, and it didn't cost the earth either. It was under £200. Pretty reasonable for a fully analog replica of a CE1. It's also got a massively reduced footprint, and like I said, it's fully analog and it's built like a tank. And finally, for John Frusciante nuts like me, it's got that built-in preamp. If you know, you know. For cons then, while it is a drastically reduced footprint compared to the original, it is still quite a big pedal, so it takes up quite a lot of real estate on your pedal board. So you might just want to use one of those pedal board planners before you commit to buying it to make sure you got room. It also perhaps doesn't get quite as extreme as some of the other chorus vibrato pedals on the market. It can be quite subtle in comparison to some of the wild effects that you can get in modern chorus pedals. For me, if I'm being completely honest, I don't love the vibrato sounds in this pedal. I do like them, and they do deliver on that original classic CE1 tone, but I tend to prefer the kind of less wet sounding vibrato, if that makes sense. and it doesn't quite do it, but yeah, it will deliver the original vibrato tones. The on indicator is a little bit weird on this pedal, so you would assume it would be this LED here underneath the on off foot switch, but that's actually a clipping indicator for the preamp. The indicator for whether the pedal is on is over here, but this is also the indicator for whether you're in chorus or vibrato mode. So when the pedal is off, the light will be steady, but when the pedal is engaged, then the light will flash. So I think that's potentially a bit confusing. It's not the end of the world, but it's also the way the original worked, as I understand it. And finally, it's that preamp again. Now, I know I put that in the pros, but like I said, you're either going to love that feature or hate that feature. So if you don't want this to be affecting your tone whenever the pedal is turned off, then it's probably not the one for you. Either that, or if you really want this pedal, then you should consider putting it in like a loop switcher or something where you can completely disengage it from your signal chain. Overall, I really like this pedal, and I think it's a really great take on a classic pedal. I do hope Boss someday take their own stab at making a CE-1 replica, but my gut tells me that if they do, they might do something more along the lines of a reimagining, much like the DM101 for example, where they took an original pedal from that era and added a whole load more features. But with that will come a lot more expense, I would imagine. Let us know what your favourite chorus and vibrato pedal is in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. You'll find affiliate links for all the products we used in this demo in the description below, so make sure to check that out too. Look for us on Instagram at Pedalboards of Doom, and do make sure you check out our massive Facebook group. We've got over 170,000 members, so loads of great discourse going on over there. Go check that out over on Facebook. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, I'm going to assume you're a pretty big chorus and vibrato fan. On your screen now, just over here, will be our demo of the B-Tronics CB, which is a crazy chorus pedal, loads of functionality. Check it out. Thanks again, and we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.